Radio Ronda 5,000 watts nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda.
Municipalities in Cavite and Rizal.
Same-day delivery is available Mondays to Saturdays if you place your order before 12 noon. Spend more time doing the things you love. Just Hub It Delivered. Visit us now at thehub.sanmiguel.com.ph. Your home made better with San Miguel.
You've heard it all. Don't smoke, drink in moderation, eat healthy, and exercise regularly. But did you know that stress can also take a huge toll on your immune system? Mindfulness is about being present and noticing what's happening in your mind and body. Here's one way to do it. First, pause and focus on your body. Notice what you see, hear, taste, and smell. Next, focus your attention on what you feel on each part of your body. Start with your head, then move down to your toes. And lastly, acknowledge your thoughts and emotions. The key here is not to judge your feelings as good or bad and to just accept them as they are.
Good evening, I'm Pio Ontiveros. Welcome to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Tonight on the program, no let-up in fuel price hikes, with the biggest increase this year taking effect tomorrow. What will the government's next step be to address the problem? Also, no end in sight for Russian attacks in Ukraine, so Filipinos there are now mandated to return home as the Foreign Affairs Department raises the highest crisis alert level in the Eastern European country. And on a lighter note, more reasons to watch The Batman as the film soars above any other movie released this year. Yet another round of pump price increases, and the biggest so far this year. Motorists will see diesel prices jump by nearly 6 pesos a liter beginning tomorrow. For gasoline, it'll be 3 pesos and 60 centavos more per liter. Kerosene will also burn a hole in your pockets, with Caltex and Sea Oil jacking up prices by over 4 pesos per liter. The adjustments, already entering their 10th consecutive week, reflect soaring oil prices in the world market because of uncertainties surrounding the Russia-Ukraine war. Public utility drivers and motorists are now lining up at gas stations ahead of the hefty fuel price hike. Our senior correspondent Lois Calderon joins us live from Quezon City. Lois, what is the situation like there?
Pia, just hours before the big-time hike in oil prices, motorists rushed to gas stations to fill up their tanks. Most of them are jeepney drivers, as oil giants announced that diesel could rise by as much as 5 pesos and 85 centavos per liter by 6 a.m. tomorrow. Unleaded and premium gasoline could spike by almost 4 pesos. 4 pesos. That's the highest overnight increase in domestic pump prices since 1998, when the oil industry was deregulated, allowing market forces to dictate price movements. But there are mounting calls for a reprieve. First to take a hit are jeepney drivers, and we talked to some of them.
Napakabigat para sa amin, lalong-lalo na pag walang pasahero. Sana bumaba pa ang presyo ng diesel sa ngayon para naman di maghihirap ang kapwa naming mga driver.
Pia, now from the oil producer side, the laundry list is long, from suspending the ceiling for prices at the electricity spot market where they trade, to as drastic as exemption from the excise tax and the value-added tax, or VAT, on oil and coal, a major source of power. The oil tax is a controversial issue given that the government needs used to pay its ballooning debt. But Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi has promised oil producers that he was to take up the VAT and excise tax on oil during a meeting with economic managers today. The economic team has yet to release a statement on the outcome of that talk. But we have seen the stock market respond to this oil crisis. Those power producers who held talks with Cusi last week are Aboitiz Power, First Gen, AC Energy, Meralco, San Miguel, and Semirara, to name a few. Aboitiz Power, First Gen, and AC Energy shares all went down today. They warned that because of soaring oil and coal prices, electricity bills could rise by as much as 9 pesos per kilowatt hour. Stock market analyst Miko Sayo weighs in on the matter.
Power companies are also affected by the rising commodity prices, no? Of course, most of them are also importing, fuel or coal, or so these companies are also getting negatively affected by the rising commodity prices. Except probably for Aboitiz Power, who has hedged most of its requirements.
Yeah, it's hard to tell where oil prices are heading according to traders given the uncertain situation in Ukraine. But those with cash, the investors, rush to safe haven assets like gold, precious metals, and commodities, while people who hardly make ends meet look to government for subsidies. Back to you, Pia.
Lois Calderon there reporting. With the consecutive weeks of fuel price hikes, basic commodities, bus and jeepney fares could be next, which could eventually lead to an appeal for a raise in the minimum wage. A committee at the House of Representatives is now looking at ways the government can address the crisis. AC Nichols reports.
Insofar as the executive is concerned, the burden is on Congress to help cushion the impact of high fuel prices. Energy officials tell lawmakers in a hearing that there is a need to amend the oil deregulation law. In particular, the agency says it wants to have the authority to control oil prices and suspend excise taxes on fuel products. Some lawmakers question the idea.
You are the regulator of the energy sector, and then you will have the same powers over your regulated sector in terms of prices. So
in this kind of situation, our participation
that will make you a superpower.
With Congress now on break until after the elections in May, lawmakers want to hold a special session to pass a measure cutting excise taxes on some fuel products. They believe this is the quick solution to the uncertain global oil market. Companies are raising fuel prices by 4 to 5 pesos per liter this week, as the world market continues to speculate on oil with a raging war between Ukraine and Russia. The Energy Department's projections, diesel, which is used by most public utility vehicles, and kerosene to cost around 70 pesos per liter, gasoline at nearly 80 pesos per liter, and cooking gas at more than 105 pesos per kilogram. This will likely have a knock-on effect on prices of basic goods and commodities.
Kung nagawa natin ito sa Bayanihan 1, Madam Chair, or Bayanihan 2, hindi naman umabot ng isang araw yung ating special session. Nakapagpasa kaagad tayo ng batas. How much more this one? No? Kung gusto natin talagang magkaroon ng immediate na kaginhawaan sa ating mamamayan, na hirap na ngayon. No? Hindi pwedeng babangon ng ekonomiya na walang panggastos ang ating mga mamamayan.
In addition, transportation stakeholders are pressing for higher fares. Bus groups want to add the fare for the succeeding kilometers, while jeepney groups want the minimum fare raised to 10 pesos. At the end of the price increase chain, consumers and commuters who have to shell out more from their shoestring budget to survive. In the meantime, some lawmakers are also calling for a review of minimum wage rates. A representative from the Economic Planning Agency says the regional wage boards are already looking into this.
We've been monitoring the situation and we've been looking at the potential impact on our workers. But I'm afraid I cannot comment more than that. Yeah.
Wala pang study talaga. So napakabagal ng ating mga economic managers kaugnay nito.
The House Committee says it will come up with a report on the issues discussed as soon as possible, even as Filipino households are hoping there will be a way out of this economic crisis sooner than later. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
If oil prices don't go down by next week, Committee Chair Joey Salceda says he will advise President Duterte to call for a special session of Congress.
Yung sagot ko dyan, Kailan ba aaray pag kinukurot? So, tingin ko March 15. We need to draw a line on the sand. If by March 15 it's still above 100, the president should call for a special session. It is his moral obligation to the people to provide relief, because that means almost 75 days of suffering already.
A major power distributor warns electricity may cost more in step with soaring fuel prices. Meralco explains the Malambayan natural gas, which is partly used for power generation in Luzon, moves with the price of crude oil in the world market. But the company notes there has been no increase in distribution charges since July 2015. Meralco has also yet to receive final billings from suppliers. While the Trade Department says the cost of basic goods will stay the same despite higher fuel prices, it adds retailers still comply with the suggested retail price. While Russian attacks are escalating by the day, Ukrainians have agreed to a third round of talks today. This follows two failed attempts to evacuate people from key cities as Russia continues to violate a supposed ceasefire. More than 1.5 million Ukrainians have fled the country in fear for their lives. In this report, CNN's John Lornick tells us 95% of the combat power Russia has amassed along the border is now in Ukraine.
As Ukrainian National Police Special Forces join the military and even ordinary citizens to protect our country, President Volodymyr Zelensky accuses Russia of deliberate murder after the shelling of Ukrainian territories.
It seems it is not enough for the Russian troops, not enough ruined destinies, crippled lives. They want to kill more.
Russia has fired around 600 missiles since the start of the invasion, according to a senior U.S. defense official, and has roughly 95% of its amassed combat power in Ukraine.
The aggressor's audacity is a clear signal to the West that sanctions imposed against Russia are not enough.
The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says more than 360 civilians have been killed since military action began.
My boyfriend died here. My aunt, my cousin, my grandmother, my sister's husband, and a friend that stayed with us.
And Western officials expect Russia will increase the strikes, putting the lives of more civilians at risk.
Sadly and tragically, I think this war is going to get far worse before it gets better.
On Sunday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced the House plans to pass $10 billion in emergency aid to Ukraine, adding that work is underway to ban Russian energy imports. I'm John Lawrence reporting.
A video authenticated by CNN on Sunday showed even anti-war protesters in Russia were beaten up by police, while here at home, the Foreign Affairs Department has raised the crisis alert level in Ukraine to the highest alert level 4. This makes the repatriation of Filipinos in the Eastern European country mandatory. When Newsnight returns, the country finally raises the age of sexual consent from 12 to 16. And the Commission on Elections says a penalty awaits those who will skip its presidential and vice presidential debates. Details next.
Pag ganito ang drama, ang cute. Pero di cute ang dramang dala ng lagnat. Magparacetamol Calpol. Works within 15 minutes. Gentle sa tiyan. Doctor prescribed Paracetamol Calpol.
Uy! May free delivery! Basta McDo free delivery, di kailangan pag-isipan. diretso na sa new Mac Delivery app.
Sarap! Download now!
Sumagat sa kabisa, bawat minutong lumilipas. Hinahanap-hanap kita, hanap-hanapin ka. Sabik sa'yo.
Napansin ko, di na sinusuot ni Mama ang pustiso niya at di komportable.
Baka gumalaw ang ngipin at di na magkasya ang pustiso pag di sinuot araw-araw. Use Polident para mas komportable ang kapit. Mag-Polident araw-araw.
Ang pain reliever mo, Advil Strong ba? Pag ang pain pabigat, mag-Advil Liquid Gel. Mas malakas kaysa paracetamol para lakas labanan ang iba't ibang pain. Kaya lakas ginhawa, mag-Advil ka na.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. A landmark move that will protect children in the country, with President Duterte signing into law a measure raising the age of sexual consent from 12 to 16. This means any sexual intercourse with a minor under 60 years old will be considered statutory rape. There will be no criminal liability if the age gap is not more than 3 years and sexual activity is consensual and non-abusive. The exception does not apply to minors below 13 years old. Senator Risa Ontiveros, principal author of the measure, lauded the signing of what she called historic legislation. The country had the second lowest age for sexual consent worldwide, next to Nigeria at 11. No more daily COVID-19 case updates beginning today. The Health Department said last week case bulletins will only be issued weekly and updates will focus on severe and critical cases, plus the situation in intensive care units. Octa Research Group Fellow Professor Guido David says while it is not a big factor for now, daily records are important to see the whole picture in case a new variant arrives again.
Baka hindi na natin makita yung mga ibang trends. We're going to lose visibility. Sa ngayon, hindi naman malaking factor yan as of now. Pero hindi natin masasabi kung magkaroon ng panibagong variant, wag naman sana, ay baka it will come at the time na kumaga wala tayong visibility. Sa monitoring, wala namang sa akin, wala namang masama na makita natin yung mga datos. At least kung nakikita natin mababa talaga yung numbers, yung mga kababayan natin, they will have more confidence to go out and enjoy this new normal.
Octa's latest analysis shows all cities and provinces in Luzon are now at low risk for COVID-19, except Puerto Princesa City in Palawan. The growth rate of cases in the provincial capital is at 48%, and the positivity rate at 38%, meaning 2 in 5 people tested have the virus. This is higher than the 5% benchmark set by the World Health Organization and an indication that the government needs to test more people. But the reproduction rate, or the number of people that one patient can infect, is still low at only 0.48. Between lockdowns and new outbreaks, how are we dealing with COVID-19 in our lifestyle and in the workplace? Is it in with the new and out with the old normal? What does it mean when experts say COVID-19 is here to stay? Join Pinky Webb and Dr. Freddy Gomez as we answer these questions on Living with COVID-19 tonight at 8 only here on CNN Philippines. The Commission on Elections finalized its 3 presidential and vice presidential debates for the May polls. As Melissa Lopez tells us, a penalty awaits those who will skip the debates.
The Sofitel Hotel is in the spotlight as the chosen venue for the official COMELEC debates for presidential and vice presidential candidates. The poll body on Monday signed an agreement with Vote Pilipinas for the Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Private firm Impact Hub Manila is behind the partnership, which also extends to their existing voters' education drive. The presidential debates are set on March 19th and April 3, followed by the vice presidential debate on March 20th. The debates start at 7 in the evening at Sofitel, which, as we recall, was the venue of the filing of candidacies back in October. The debates will be aired live on free TV and on social media. 2 town hall format debates are also lined up on April 23 and 24, where audience members may ask questions directly to candidates.
Wala pong ibang layunin ang debating ito kundi matulungan ang ating mga botante na malaman kung saan kayo tumatayo sa iba't ibang issue na kinakaharap ng ating lipunan at kung ano ang inyong mga plano upang masolusyonan ang mga ito.
COMELEC says debate skippers will be meted with penalty.
Empty po yung podium, at the same time, yung kandidatong hindi umattend ay hindi na makakagamit ng ating e-rally platform.
COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez says all camps are likely to attend the debates, but notes they are still securing written commitments within the week for all candidates. Vice presidential candidates Sara Duterte and Lito Atienza have earlier said they will not attend, while presidential bet Bongbong Marcos is still unsure if he can make it. The poll body assures that no advance questions will be released except for general topics such as the COVID-19 pandemic issues and economic revival will be relayed to attendees. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
Presidential candidate Senator Ping Lacson denies red tagging supporters of rival Vice President Leni Robredo. That's after he drew flack for expressing concern over Cavite Representative Boying Remulla's claims students who joined Robredo's grand rally in the province on Friday looked like activists being trained by communist groups. Lacson argued he was simply warning about a possible coalition government with the Communist Party of the Philippines, the New People's Army, and the National Democratic Front. The Cavite chapter of the Robredo People's Council, which organized the rally, condemned the allegations, saying red tagging by prominent public figures could put rally attendees in danger. The camps of presidential candidates Bongbong Marcos and Manny Pacquiao clash over Marcos's non-participation in debates. The spat began when Pacquiao said candidates who refuse to join debates are not ready to lead the country. Marcos's spokesperson Vic Rodriguez said those who apply for jobs subject themselves to an intensive interview, not a debate. He's also called on Pacquiao's, quote, sudden bravery as misplaced, saying the boxer turned politician should have shown it at the Senate. Pacquiao's camp fired back Monday.
Let me make it clear that Senator Pacquiao is merely stating the obvious, na a true leader must be courageous to face his people despite all odds and kahit na it's inconvenient for him. In short, hindi dapat naduduwag.
Acción Democrático, the political party of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, asks the Bureau of Internal Revenue whether the agency has renewed its demands to the Marcoses on the 203.8 billion pesos in unpaid estate taxes. Party Chairman Ernest Ramel says Moreno intends to give the money as cash aid to Filipinos who lost their jobs amid the COVID-19 pandemic should he win. The spokesperson of Bongbong Marcos earlier said the properties connected to the family's estate tax case are still under litigation. And Labor leader Caliodi de Guzman unveils his youth agenda should he win the presidency. His agenda covers programs for out-of-school youth, young workers, and persons with disabilities, as well as gender-based policies. Now, has the party list system lost its purpose? A poll watchdog believes so, saying the rich and powerful are using party list groups as backdoor to Congress. Melissa Lopez returns.
177 party lists on the May 2022 ballot, each hoping to snag at least one seat in the 19th Congress in July. But poll watchdog Contradaya says 70% or 120 groups are not true to the spirit of party lists in giving a voice to the poor and neglected.
This has been used as a backdoor, not just of the political clans, but also of big businesses in order to add more seats in their quest to control practically the House of Representatives. I think that's the biggest manifestation of how the party list system has been bastardized, because if you are part of the marginalized sector, I doubt if you'll be one of the richest in Congress right now.
Contradaya identified Barangay Health Workers Party List Representative Angelica Natasha Co as one of the members of a political clan who used the party list system to get into Congress. But Co insists her party is legitimate. She says she's been able to work with the sector she represents through medical missions. Bayan Muna Representative Carlos Zarate expressed belief they only have a few genuine allies left among party list lawmakers in pushing for pro-poor measures.
Yung pag-advocate halimbawa natin ng taasan ng presyo na ang minimum wage ng mga manggagawa, hindi rin pumapasa sa Kongreso yan. Even doon sa mga members ng party list group. Theoretically, kung magkaka-unite yun, napakalaking impact noon.
Both Contradaya and Zarate say the Commission on Elections is equally to blame for letting this happen. But the poll body insists its hands are tied.
We have the Atong Paglaom case, which is the case that sets the guidelines that a party, a group, need not be marginalized as long as it has advocacies. It's for the people, for the voters to decide and to discern properly what party list groups to choose during the elections.
Zarate's Makabayan Bloc is behind the bill to review the Party List System Act of 1995, but it hasn't even made it to plenary voting during the past 5 Congresses, whose members include party list representatives being questioned. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
We'll take a short break. When we return, an exciting weekend for sports fans with Filipino athletes like Mylene Pat making waves overseas, and the Caped Crusader makes an impressive debut at the U.S. box office. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Pandemic, serving others is the best. Sa pagtutulungan, patuloy ang ating laban sa buhay. Kaya dapat always healthy. With proper diet, exercise, and MX3 coffee mix to ignite my day. Hi guys! Lagi akong focused, active, at extraordinary. Because the most important things in life deserve nothing less. MX3 coffee mix, my choice.
Uy! May free delivery! Basta McDo free delivery, di kailangan pag-isipan. Diretso na sa new McDelivery app.
Sarap! Download now!
With this new Galaxy S lineup, we are set to bring the epic standard for premium smartphones. We have created an entirely new Galaxy mobile experience with the Galaxy S22 Ultra. And for the first time, the S series will have the Galaxy's signature S Pen built-in. Now for those who want devices that fuel creativity and self-expression, the Galaxy S22 and Galaxy S22 Plus can help make every moment epic. We also welcome a new addition into our ecosystem, the Tab S8. Premium cameras, super fast connectivity, batteries that last you all day, and of course, innovative new ways to share. And that is everything that the Galaxy brand is known for.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Our athletes put on a great show of Pinoy talent in tournaments abroad on Sunday. Mylene Paat was named best scorer in the Volleyball Thailand League after a bronze medal win with her team Nakon Ratchasima. This makes Paat the first Filipino volleyball import of her generation to win an individual award in a league overseas. And pole vault star EJ Obiena has outdone himself again, breaking the national indoor pole vault record. Obiena leapt 5.91 meters in his first attempt, landing a runner-up finish in the Perche Elite Tour in France. The 26-year-old surpassed his previous mark of 5.86 meters, which he achieved in Poland last year. Now, after the breakthrough jump, Obiena showed support for Ukraine, pointing to his baller on his left wrist with the beleaguered nation's colors. The Olympian's longtime coach, Vitaly Petrov, is Ukrainian. Some popular video platforms are limiting or altogether removing services in Russia. TikTok announced on Sunday it is restricting some features in light of Putin's or Vladimir Putin's new law penalizing what he calls fake news. Live streaming and new content from Russia are suspended for now. Under a new law, anyone that spreads what the country says is misinformation about its military could get a 15-year prison sentence. And Netflix has made its streaming video service unavailable in Russia. The move to support Ukraine will impact about 1 million Netflix subscribers. Earlier this week, the company paused production in Russia, including 4 original TV series. And in movies, The Batman soars above any other film released this year with its record-breaking debut at the U.S. box office, earning over $128 million. The DC blockbuster had the biggest opening weekend in North America this 2022. The Batman only comes second to fellow superhero movie Spider-Man No Way Home for best debut since the pandemic began. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
Kini ang simbianan sa RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda 5,000 watts nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda.
When children play outdoors, there's a chance they'll touch contaminated soil and then touch their mouths right after. Or they might accidentally swallow contaminated water while swimming. This leaves them at risk of parasitic worms. These parasites often affect a child's growth as well as their development. This is why deworming for both children and adults is vital. On the program today, we'll talk more about the benefits of deworming, the most common parasitic infections, and the treatments available. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk right here on CNN Philippines. Worms are parasites that take up residence inside a person. If left untreated, it can develop into an infectious disease. Our guests are here today to tell us what to do if this happens and how to prevent it altogether. With us is Dr. Rosalie Fuentes de la Rosa. She's a pediatrician at Dr. Sally's Pediatric Clinic. Also with us is Dr. Cesar Matthew Madria. He is a family and community medicine specialist from the Cagayan Valley Medical Center. You might be surprised to know that parasitic intestinal worms are very, very common. In fact, in 2018, 1 in every 2 Filipino school children were infected with worms. Some parents have started to believe that it's normal or even beneficial. but parasitic worms are detrimental to a child's health. I'll start first with Dr. Sally. Tell us more about current condition of intestinal parasitic worms, especially here in the Philippines.
There are detrimental effects of parasitic infestation in the body. It is a most common infection which affects many people each year worldwide, particularly mga school-age children.
So anyone can get infected, not just children, but adults as well. And there are certain factors that make some people more vulnerable to intestinal worms. Dr. Matthew, can you explain how someone can get them? Ano yung mga pinaka-common ways na na-infect tayo ng intestinal worms?
First is the fecal oral route. This is when a healthy person drinks water or eats food that is contaminated with the helminth egg. So after taking in, this larva now will hatch from the egg, and it will migrate actually to the other parts of the body, such as the lungs, the liver, and even into the heart. When this larvae will get nourishment from the body, from the host, they will become adult worms. Now, these adult worms will reproduce and create more eggs, and this will be passed into the stool. So this is the problem now. When a person defecates into open places, that is where the cycle starts.
Why are infections more prevalent, especially dito sa Pilipinas?
Actually, there are different risk factors for parasitic worm infection. Number one is always poor sanitation. When you don't wash your hands before and after eating, even after doing dirty works, eating raw, improperly prepared food or drinking contaminated water, even occupation, because soil-transmitted infection needs soil for it to be transmitted. So this is where the farmers are very much vulnerable in this infection. Another is poverty, the absence of the clean and safe comfort rooms for the proper disposal of the stools. And lastly is being in the tropics, because some helminths need a warm and moist environment for them to survive.
If you think that your child has parasitic intestinal infections, there are some telltale signs that may appear with this. Dr. Sally, ano kaya ang mga ibang mga symptoms o kaya red flags na pwedeng makita ng mga magulang?
Ang common doon is yung weight loss or yung failure to gain weight or hindi sila masyadong tumataba. Some patients may also present with anemia. Yun yung mga medyo sa mga end stage na kasi there are parasites that feeds on the red blood cells. So, most commonly din sa mga children, ang manifestation nila, akala nila minsan mabagal lang ang pick up ng bata. Yun pala, they are also having this poor concentration because of the presence of parasites in their body.
Now, an infected person might also experience dysentery, an intestinal infection that causes diarrhea with blood as well as mucus. This is why deworming is vital. Dr. Sally, what exactly is deworming? Ano mga benefits nito?
Some of the most common na health benefits of deworming or pagpupurga is it helps the child improve yung child's immunity, thereby protecting them from chronic illness like yung mga gastrointestinal infections. And kapag ka meron ng ganito na nagde-deworm, it can also improve the concentration, thereby nag-i-improve ang kanilang school attendance. It also increases the nutritional uptake since kapag wala nang nag-feed na parasite sa kanila, mas nagkakaroon ng maayos na nutritional absorption, thereby preventing anemia and other gastrointestinal related infections. And in turn, nape-prevent din ang worm infection within and outside the community.
Doc Matthew, gaano kadalas dapat mag-deworm?
Here in the Philippines, we do not have actually a mandatory deworming for the adult population, but we have a special program for the adolescent female, pregnant, and special group of people like the farmers, the food handlers, and also the people from the indigenous group. So what we do with these people is that we give albendazole 400 milligrams or mebendazole 500 milligrams, one tablet, once a year, every time that they seek consultation from a healthcare institution.
Gaano kadalas dapat dinideworm ang mga bata?
Actually, an administrative order was already issued by the DOH which recommends the use of biannual deworming for children ages 1 to 12 years old. So, same din sa adults, but with the kids, we do it biannually or every 6 months. And the WHO and the DOH both recommends either the use of albendazole or mebendazole. So, for albendazole, this can be given for 1 to 2 years old, yung 200 milligrams single dose every 6 months, and yung 400 milligrams na dosing every 6 months then for 2 years old and above And if merong time na hindi available ang albendazole, mebendazole can also be used as 500 milligrams single dose every 6 months then for 1-year-old and above. So either of which can be used, basta should be taken on full stomach.
Now, as was mentioned earlier, hindi lang mga bata ang vulnerable sa parasitic worms. Adults can get them as well. More on this when we return. You're watching Med Talk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Protektahi ang imong mga mata batok sa delikado ug makadaot nga ultraviolet nga silaw sa adlaw ug uban pa. Pinaagi sa pagsulob og eksakto nga prescription sa antiyohos o antipara. Likay ang mga simptomas sama sa hanap nga pananaw sa layo o duol nga basahon, sakit sa ulo ug uban pa nga makaapekto sa atong kahimsog nga ang hinungdan depekto sa atong mga mata. Alang sa kumpleto nga primary eye care, contact lenses, fashion eyewear, computer eyeglasses, sunglasses, accessories ug uban pa, adto kita sa AG Buñuel Optical Clinic. Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic nagpahinumdum kanato nga ang kahimsog sa atong mga mata usa ka prioridad nga angay ipa-check up kausa matag tuig aron pagsiguro nga luwas kita sa piligrong mga sakit. Pinagi sa lisensyado og qualified optometrists nga maoy mo prescribe sa eksaktong kagamitan ug kung primary eye care ang paghisgutan. Duaw lang silang buhatan sa 3636 sa Nicolas Street, Surigao City ug adunay ilang extension office sa Aurelianida Street, Cantilan, Surigao del Sur. Ayaw kalimti higala. AG Buñuel Optical Clinic.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic doon na branch dito sa lungsod sa Dapa sa may Lupis Haina Street, Poblasyon Dapa, Surigao del Norte.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic dinhi sa siyudad ng Surigao no transfer na sa bag-ong location sa Nicolas Street Ragyahapon, tapad sa Garcia Hotel at bang sa Unicity.
Salamat, masarap at sulit. Salamat, award-winning ang quality. Salamat, imported ang ingredient mo. Salamat, for me kay salamat swabing brandy. Salamat sa Primera Light, halina tikman. Primera klase ang Primera Light tinuman.
Salamat, free! Drink responsibly.
Ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated na sa ilang bagong location sa Dalan, Burgos, ning atong syudad. Mahimo niyong tawagan sa telephone number 231-7478 or 826-3663. Mga produkto nga inyong mapalit, genuine, Makita Power Tools sama sa planer, drill, grinder, Triton paints, construction supplies, angle bars, flat bars, GI pipes, automotive spare parts, Firefly electrical devices sama sa switches, bulbs ug outlets. Adto ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated sa ilang bagong pwesto sa Dalan, Burgos ning syudad. Makahangyo ka o makabarato pagyod diha sa Riverside Parts Master Incorporated.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Welcome back to Med Talk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. When parasitic worms enter a human body, they steal nutrients from the person they infect. For children, it affects their growth as well as their development. For adults naman, it can impact their daily lives as well. Dr. Matthew, what happens kapag ang isang adult gets a intestinal worm infection? What does that mean for their health in general?
First is with iron deficiency anemia. The person usually presents with easy fatigability and weakness due to the decreased number of your oxygen-carrying function of your hemoglobin, as well as the presence of dizziness and lightheadedness. Also, of course, the gross appearance of being pale. And for the protein deficiency, that would lead to muscle weakness and easy fatigability, as well as poor wound healing. It may cause dry eyes, dry skin, even night color blindness, and impaired wound healing.
With that being said, Dr. Matthew, ano yung mga trabaho that are high risk for contracting intestinal parasites or intestinal worms?
That is why our government has this mandatory treatment for a special group of persons, especially the farmers, because again, soil-transmitted infections need your soil for it to be transmitted. So people who work a lot in the soil or who are in contact with soil are the most vulnerable. So farmers, also the food handlers, because they could transmit the infection through improperly cooked and handled foods.
Now, Dr. Sally, talking about deworming, should the deworming be done even pag walang simptomas na ikita? Mukhang healthy yung bata, walang nararamdaman. Is it good practice to deworm them every 6 months?
Although it is recommended na dapat lahat sila is biannual or every 6 months nagde-deworm, there are cases na i-hold mo muna temporarily yung pagde-deworm. For example, the child is sick, may lagnat siya, or suffering from malnourishment, or nagda-diarrhea siya, or with abdominal pain. So those are the only instances na you cannot deworm a child. But otherwise, if the child is healthy, as soon as nag-reach na siya ng 1-year-old and up to 12 years old, pwede na silang mag-underwent ng deworming.
So I think it's just important na malaman nyo yung mga pwedeng mag-infect sa atin. Let's talk about tapeworms first. Dr. Sally, pag-usapan natin ng tapeworms. Ano ba yung mga tapeworm? Sino yung mga mas at high risk para sa mga tapeworm infection?
Okay, so when we say tapeworms, these are intestinal parasites that are shaped like tape measures, hence the name tapeworm. And tapeworm infection is caused when someone ingests food or nakainom siya ng water with tapeworm eggs or larva. Now, when these eggs reaches the mouth, na isubo ang kamay or sa food na kakain, the head of the tapeworm will now attach dun sa intestinal wall. And once inside the intestinal wall, nasa bituka ng host or ng pasyente, this can now migrate or magka-travel na siya to other tissues or sa other body organs. This can further turn as mature na mga adult tapeworms, which can last kahit mga 30 years na parang asymptomatic. So you can get a tapeworm infection by consumption ng mga raw o yung mga hilaw na beef, pork, mga fish na merong tapeworm eggs.
Now, another common type of parasitic worm here in our country ay ang hookworm naman. Dr. Matthew, pag-usapan niyo naman yung hookworm. Saan ito nanggagaling? Anong klaseng mga simptomas meron ito? At sino yung mga at risk ng hookworm infection?
Yeah, actually, hookworms are named as such due to their curved mouths with cutting plates or teeth, which they need to embed on the host tissues to feed on the blood. So the hookworms that infect man, which is common here in the Philippines, are Necator americanus and Ancylostoma duodenale. So they have complex life cycle wherein the larva it develops in the external environment before infecting the host through the skin penetration. So this is different from what Dr. Sally had explained a while ago, because this one needs to penetrate into the skin for it to infect the person. So these hookworms are a common soil-transmitted infection among farmers.
But there's one worm that we want to also talk about. Ito ay ang pinworm. Dr. Sally, pag-usapan natin ang pinworm. Ito ay importante because this is very common, especially with children as well.
Pinworm naman is an intestinal infection caused by yung mga tiny parasitic worms. It's a common infection affecting millions of people each year, lalo na yung mga children, school age in particular. And just like how most of the parasites, like yung tapeworm, ganun din siya. You can usually get this when the egg reaches the mouth and travels to the intestine. And these eggs can be found on contaminated hands and surfaces, like sa mga kumot, beddings, toilet, mga pajamas, underwear, and even mga unsanitized toys. And when one person touches an infected area, and people may tend to put their fingers sa mouth nila, and that's when the pinworm infection will start to occur. Some patients or hosts na merong pinworm, they may develop mild symptoms or none at all. But after 1 to 2 months, once nag-hatch na yung egg na yon or naging larva na siya, the female pinworm, yun na yung magpupunta, magta-travel, magpa-passed out na siya, maglilay na siya ng eggs, mangingitlog na siya around the anus or dun sa butas ng puwet. So that's when the most common symptom will be felt by the host.
So these different types of parasitic worms bring about different effects. but your doctor will diagnose and treat them all the same. So more on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. We'll be right back.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Maayong balita sa tanan sa atong panginahanglan sa panimalay, mga gamit, ingon man mga dekorasyon, pwede na natong mapalit diha sa Wellington Bazaar. Anausab sa Wellington Bazaar ang mga bistidahon, karsunison, plain t-shirt, plastic chair, floor mat, mantel, banig, folding bed, habol, mosketero, trapal, lideret, basketball, stuffed toys ug mga dulaan sa bata. Ang Wellington Bazaar ana magalagad kanato sa Dalan Kaimo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Wellington Bazaar, gikan sa mga kawani ug tigdumala sa Wellington Bazaar. Mayong adlaw alang kaninyo. Wellington Bazaar, sukiyon ta sa kanunay.
Salamat, nagyaya ka na ulit. Salamat, liquor ba na lifter? Ito sa amin. Salamat, may bago tayong tropa. Salamat, tayo ay buhay pa. Salamat sa Primera Light, halina tikman. Primera klase ang Primera Light tinuman. Salamat, Spree! Drink responsibly.
Ay, kasakit yun sa ako ang mga mata. Uy, labad pagyud kay ako ang ulo. Murag kog malipong ba? Unya, murag limtanon pagyud ko. Unsaon man ni, uy.
Naanag yun kay problema, miss. Ha? Tanawa ko, nagsakay ka ng tricycle. Wala kay suot, bra. Para masolba na imo problema, ha? Pag inuman ni, Lutein Plus.
Unsa? Lutein Plus? Asa man na nimo gikan?
Ako man ninadunggan sa radyo, miss. Maong kagapalit ko naan, pagpagandam ba?
Sige, salamat kayo ha. Magpalit dayon ko og Lutein Plus.
RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
This is MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. A common condition here in the Philippines is parasitic worms, and you can become infected through contaminated food as well as contaminated water. So this is why deworming among children and adults can make a huge difference. So if you're experiencing any unusual symptoms, or if you're returning from a different country, don't wait to reach out to your doctor. Remember, getting treatment early can stop the spread of infection to others. Dr. Sally, what are some of the tests to diagnose itong mga parasitic worms, intestinal worms?
We usually start, of course, with thorough medical history taking. That includes yung history of travel, the food practices, the nutritional history, the patient's symptoms, and of course, physical examination. After doing such, we now proceed with yung basic pa din is the initial diagnostic of doing stool exam or fecalysis, wherein a stool sample is being sent to the laboratory. Other tests that can be done then is yung Scotch tape test, where a tape is being applied around the anus several times, and then this will be sent to the laboratory to be examined under a microscope. And in some cases na worms or parasites cannot be detected through this test, yung iba nagre-request din ng blood test or imaging test like X-ray, CT scan, MRI. It will basically depend on the location and extent of the disease being suspected.
So once diagnosed, a doctor will administer treatment through prescription of anti-parasitic medications. These are meant to kill the parasites and help them pass through your system. Dr. Sally, pag-usapan natin what should they expect kapag nag-undergo na sila ng anti-parasitic treatment.
So first of all, some types of intestinal worms, like yung tapeworms, most commonly they disappear on their own even if you do not anything, especially if you have a strong immune system, healthy diet, and lifestyle. But there are cases where antiparasitic medications are warranted. And when these are started, after a few weeks of treatment, usually symptoms will gradually improve. And yung mga common natin binibigay na mga antiparasitic medications, yung mga albendazole, mebendazole, and so on. Ang mga actions ng antiparasitic medications are very efficient in paralyzing the parasite para ma-detach sila sa intestinal wall, eventually ma-dissolve, and they will be passed sa stool without us even noticing. And yun, and we must also address din yung kagaya na sabi ni Dr. Matthew, yung iron prescription to address the anemia. So basically, the treatment will depend on based on the type of parasite and how the symptoms present with the patient.
Now, Dr. Matthew, speaking of itong treatment natin, can our viewers self-medicate? Can they treat themselves without the guidance ng doktor?
That is a no-no for us, of course, because there are certain indications for medications. We still have to take note of the complete history of the patients. Also, we need to do physical examination because these are critical data for us when to give certain medication for person with a worm infection.
Now, as with most medical conditions, the best treatment pa rin is prevention. Dr. Sally, can you give us some tips to prevent parasitic worm infections, especially in mga bansa katulad natin na developing pa?
Mainstay pa din is yung regularly wash our hands with soap and water. We must also ensure yung food and drink safety. So ibig sabihin nito, let us refrain from consumption ng mga unboiled or mga unsafe na water, even consumption of mga unwashed and improperly cooked na food. Also, proper diet is also paramount when it comes to treating and preventing parasite infestation.
Okay, very good. And with that, thank you very much, pediatrician Dr. Sally Fuentes de la Rosa and family medicine specialist Dr. Matthew Madria for being with us today in this very helpful topic. Kumbaga, lahat tayo affected dito. We appreciate your time and your insights very much.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We'll see you again next time.